Today, I'm going to break down and evaluate every social media platform as a street photographer. Earlier this year, I made a video about why I'm ditching social media as a street photographer for the rest of this year in 2022. In that video, I talked about how I'm not completely gonna ditch social media, that I would reevaluate these platforms and what their benefits might be for someone like me or someone like you who's watching this video. And that after having some distance away from these platforms, I would go back and reevaluate them. Well, today is that day. What's up, y'all? My name is Matt, and on this channel, we talk about street photography and all the subjects and topics related to it. Before we get into it, I need to explain the thought process behind my thinking as we approach social media from a street photographer's perspective, especially as an aspiring street photographer and someone who's doing it and learning it and trying to get better at it and just loves doing it versus someone who might be making money or someone who's, I don't know who's making money from street photography, but as opposed to someone who's done this for 20 plus years or someone who's doing a different genre like wedding or portraits or what have you. If you've been on Instagram and in the photography space, then you've probably run into accounts that post photos that get thousands and thousands of likes. But when you look at it, you go, huh? Which naturally begs the question, what is great street photography and what makes a great street photographer? Pulling it back even more, what makes a street photographer? What makes a beginner street photographer versus a expert or guru in street photography? And what is the difference between someone who consumes content as a street photographer and someone who creates content as a street photographer? And how does that compare to other genres of photography? I'd say specifically for street photography, it's a lot more about the process than the results a lot of the times, because of the street and the nature of going out and doing this thing. Not every photo you take is going to be a banger because there are so many variables and factors outside of your control happening that influence the end result. It's not like studio photography where you have complete control of the light, you have your pick of a subject, you have backdrops, you can do everything. You can control so many levers and factors to get an end result that's really good. But I think in street, it's more about the process. It's more about us going out and shooting and doing the damn thing. But on the other hand, social media is about the opposite. Social media encourages sharing your results. And because street photography is a process where you don't always get great results each time you go out, there's a conflict in the nature of these two things. The nature of these platforms push street photographers to have less of a filter when sharing their work because they encourage constant churn via artificial likes. But not only that, another negative side effect of social media is that they literally just keep you glued to your phone. And when you're being gamified to just stick to your phone, then you're conversely not going out there and doing the thing. And for many street photographers like myself, we have a day job. Most of our day is taken up by other responsibilities. So the time that's left over it's finite. We have a decision to make on how to spend it. If we're spending time on social media, then that means we're not spending time on street photography. It goes back to my question of what makes a great street photographer? Obviously, what makes a great street photographer are the results. Very tangibly, we're talking about photos that creatively show a vision of the world that maybe we haven't considered before. Photos that have something to say. These are the results, but what activities actually get someone there? In my opinion, for street photography, I think that boils down to 3 activities. That's learning from good sources, actually going out and doing the thing and shooting. Third, I think that's going back after having gone out and critically reviewing my own work and figuring out how I can experiment next time or possibly build upon something that interests me. When I think about it this way, it's pretty clear to me that none of these platforms help me do any of these activities. And if they're not helping me with these activities, then I'm not getting better, right? And you might be saying to yourself, this sounds true, but I mean, what about the benefits of social media? Like, I do get some benefits, and because I get some benefits, then what's the harm in using it? There's this guy named Cal Newport, who's this computer science professor who's written this book about the idea of deep work. You might have heard of it. It's basically deliberate practice. And in his book, he talks about this notion of the any benefit mindset. The any benefit mindset is that people will justify using a platform or tool if they find any benefit in doing so, or if they fear or if they have FOMO of not using it. But really what we should be doing is taking these benefits and weighing them against these cons and deciding whether or not the benefits significantly outweigh the negatives. And in doing so, we can decide whether or not a tool is actually right for us. But this analysis that we do banks on the goal that we've set for ourselves, which for me is to become a better street photographer, which to become a better street photographer banks on those three activities that I talked about. If you have a different idea or a different goal or just disagree on the activities, if your definitions are different than mine, then this analysis is going to be different. That's why I needed to explain everything. With that out of the way, let's get into breaking down every mother tool. As you can see on the left, we have significantly negative, not sure, significantly positive, and because I took a template off TierMaker and it included all these other social media platforms that I don't think street photographers use. For these big six, we're gonna go over Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, blogs. I have Tumblr as the icon, but blogs and Instagram. For each platform, I'm going to talk about three aspects, which are the three activities I outlined: basically learning, going out, and self-review, or just not self-review, but in any shape or form, somehow getting your work reviewed, seen by either yourself or somebody else that has the potential to make it better. Additionally, I know as a street photographer, you want to share your work, so I'm going to talk about sharing also. So to get started with Facebook, for learning, I don't see any benefit at all. Maybe Facebook groups and going out and meeting up with people with this similar interest and doing photo walks, maybe finding a mentor, but I'm not too keen on that. I also don't think photo walks actually can be helpful. There's potential there. I haven't touched it, but I could see it being a benefit. For going out, Facebook doesn't help you go out. For reviewing photos, Facebook doesn't help you review your photos either, or review your work. Maybe again on Facebook groups, but I'm gonna talk about the con about that in just a second. For sharing, definitely there's no benefit. Facebook isn't the right audience. It's made up of your friends from like 2007 to like 15 or something. And as a content creator, there's definitely no growth potential. On the flip side, what I meant by reviewing photos and the audience that is on Facebook, which is basically your friends. For me, I don't have friends on Facebook who are photographers and posting stuff that I find valuable. Like I said, Facebook groups, maybe yes, but I think there are better ways to find mentors than on groups. I don't actually think people you would want as a mentor would be spending much time on groups. In fact, the con of a bunch of these tools, I'm gonna keep repeating, is the time cost. How much time you spend on Facebook is time that could have been spent going out and doing those things. So for me, Facebook is a significantly negative. Next up, we have Twitter. It's used to connect with other like-minded people. You can share any tips that you have for street photography, or even just share your struggles, and people will join in on a conversation with you, or maybe even provide tips. That's a benefit. You can also ask for feedback on Twitter. I know sharing photos on Twitter is you can actually share wide photos compared to Instagram that's vertical portrait based. So asking for feedback is possible. For sharing work, yeah, definitely getting your work out there, building a following, increasing your exposure, your branding. Twitter, I've heard that people find potential clients or partners to work on stuff with. A lot of people who do gigs for photographing restaurants, venues, etc., use it as a marketing channel. Again, I think it's better than Instagram because it allows for horizontal photos, which that's the format that cameras shoot in. Compared to Instagram, you only get 4 photos, so there is a limitation there. There is growth potential as a content creator. I just ranked it as a medium. If you have more thoughts on that, I'd love to know. I said connecting with other like-minded people and other photographers, but I'm not sure how good these sources are. Like, how legit are these? I don't want to be following someone who's like on my level or worse than me. I'm just not gonna learn from them, right? It's like you're playing sports or you're training with someone who's at your level. You're not gonna get better. If there are good sources on Twitter, then I think the fix for this is to filter who you're following and to make sure the intake of content that you're getting is from good sources. Another con is the fear of missing out. The amount of time spent to find one good tip on a Twitter feed versus intentionally researching is just, it doesn't make sense. Again, if you filter your content, then I think that can be mitigated. Then another con again is how much time you spend on Twitter. Could you be spending that time elsewhere? All in all, when I think about it, Twitter has potential. I think it has a lot of potential for content creation or using it as a business. But for street photography, just the nature of it, it's not really business oriented. And with finding tips, I think there are better ways to learn from others. So Twitter, I'm gonna say significantly negative. It doesn't drive any of those activities that we talked about. A blog, this one's interesting. I randomly run across street photography blogs and I can find some pretty in-depth tips out there that is really useful. I think a blog is also a good way to review your own work and document your journey, kind of like a journal. A benefit of consuming blogs too is that it is kind of hard to consume because blogs are usually long form. A blog really requires active reading, even compared to YouTube, which is passive consumption. Like for blogs, you actually have to use your brain and read, versus for a video, you can just sit there and let the information come to you. For sharing your work though, you do have the most control compared to other platforms. You can have layout flexibility. You can share as many photos as you want, as many as at the same time on one screen, whether that's vertical, horizontal, whatever format you want. But on the flip side, it's 2022. Blogs are really hard to grow. The cons of consuming blogs is similar to Twitter. And I'm not sure how good these sources are unless, it's Joel Meyerowitz, like his blog or something. I don't think he has a blog. But again, you can mitigate this by filtering who you follow and what you consume. And if you can make sure these sources are good, then a blog can be super helpful. Bloggers don't post as often as Twitter. It takes a lot of work to make a really good blog post. So I don't think you'll be on it too much. As a creator though, that is a con. It's high effort and time sometimes to create a blog post that's good. And you can definitely get all anal about it. As a creator, it is hard to grow. So for a blog, because it's less of a time suck than Twitter, and for the flexibility it offers as a creator to show your work, I'm not sure. As a creator, no, but as an aspiring street photographer where you want to maybe document your journey, it's got potential. And if you're not trying to grow it, then you don't have to get all crazy about making sure you rank in search and whatnot. And then as a consumer, yeah, you can find good stuff out there, but you got to make sure you're finding good stuff. So I think there's potential there. For Instagram, Instagram is a platform that at least you used to be able to get your work noticed. People still use it to build a following and use it as a marketing channel. For learning, I'm not too sure. From my own personal experience, I've been on the Instagrams. I've checked out Instagrams of famous contemporary photographers, at least according to their Instagram follower count. They'll have their best work, but I also have noticed some photos on there where they're not as good. And I think it's just because of keeping up with the social media channel that they feel compelled to have to share any type of content to stay relevant. So for learning, leaning towards not really. Instagram doesn't help you go outside, that's for sure. Instagram isn't also a place to get feedback for your work, especially you have to build a following to get people's eyes on it. Otherwise you're just getting your friends looking at your photos, which is a similar thing to Facebook. As for sharing your work, like I said, not sure anymore because Instagram decided to become a video platform with Reels and whatever else they're jacking from other companies. But it is better for sharing vertical photos because of the algorithm. The search is bad on there, so there's little growth. For the cons, in my experience, even good sources don't post helpful tips or best work all the time, which is cool. You get to see behind the scenes, but if you're trying to learn and grow, then another con is time. Like if I'm trying to grow and I'm just spending time looking at these behind the scenes photos, which is cool, but it's not helping me become better, then it's not useful. Another negative that I think Instagram started, in fact, was this mind shift change when approaching photography and sharing stuff. Because of the culture surrounding likes, you're thinking about others and what others will think of stuff you post, which affects what you want to share, and maybe even affects what you go out and want to take. Maybe you're not shooting for yourself anymore or shooting what interests you, you're shooting for these likes, and that can definitely lead to an energy sap. I've been there. So with that energy sap, it just makes it not fun, and it's another bad negative. So Instagram, I'm gonna have to go significantly negative. TikTok, I've seen a lot of people get their work out there and do really cool montages and little videos, and it's really easy as a creator, I think, to build a big following because of the algorithm. And on TikTok, I have gotten some tips sometimes, none that I can remember, but I do know people share content in the form of like tutorials and tips, which is cool. Again, not sure how good these sources are, so like the food you're eating, it's kind of questionable what this attention diet is like. As for sharing your work, TikTok definitely doesn't lend itself to review because of the nature of like how quick these videos go. And I mean, no one is on TikTok to spend dedicated time looking at photos. The platform doesn't lend itself to looking at stills. As a creator, the growth opportunity is the biggest here. The cons again is time. TikTok is the biggest time sucking platform. And I sound like a broken record, but I'm not sure how good these sources are. So if I'm on TikTok, I don't know how frequently these people I follow are gonna post tips that are gonna make me a better photographer. So again, I'm just wasting time. TikTok, significantly negative, but show. Finally, we have YouTube. YouTube is a wealth of educational content. You can learn about anything on YouTube, especially photography. YouTube as a content creator, there's a revenue stream there where you can make money for sure. YouTube is also a way to get your work out there, doing videos include your stills, and so you can definitely learn on YouTube. YouTube won't help you go outside. YouTube won't help you review. I think it's cool to do something creative and do some self-reflection or make something cool involving your stills and your work, but for actually getting feedback, YouTube isn't the place. And as a content creator, it's not bad. You can have pretty good growth on YouTube, which leads to a revenue stream and making money. On the flip side, again, I'm not sure how good these sources are. There are good sources on YouTube. If you've seen any interviews with famous photographers and the masters and just people who know their stuff, like it's a gold mine, like that they're just speaking to you for free. I watched some of these Joel Meyerowitz videos and I'm like, oh my God, I just want to keep hearing this guy talk. He makes freaking photography sound like the best thing to come out since Bagel Bites or some shit. But aside from these videos or interviews with generally accepted masters of street photography, or even videos that show you new photographers that you don't know about, I think YouTube definitely lends itself to learning about gear and how to get the most of your gear and anything gear, new gear, really well. I think it lends to learning technical technique really well. And I noticed, having been a consumer in the YouTube photography space, a lot of people end up talking about the same shit, to be honest. A lot of people end up just talking about gear most of the time, which is fine, but at some point that's only gonna help so much. And I see myself definitely at this point having diminishing returns watching a lot of these videos. As a YouTube creator, it takes a high amount of effort and time to make good YouTube videos. If you have the motivation to make money off of YouTube, it's gonna take a lot of time properly researching, writing, scripting, and definitely editing a video, unless you outsource. Even making this video right now, with writing it, with recording it, with gonna be editing it, this takes up so much time that I'm not going out. Like, look at this. I'm in the dark in this room recording this video and not going outside. So YouTube, I want to put not sure, because it's such a great wealth of information, and if you can filter and you can control yourself, it is significantly positive. But if you are just mindlessly consuming on here, and at some point you can't just keep on consuming, because that's not gonna make you better. And really, I'm talking about this for myself. So in general, I'm gonna have to give it significantly negative. I'm gonna leave it at not sure, but I'm leaning towards negative. In conclusion, we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok being significantly negative. YouTube and blogs being not sure / maybe, though blogs is leaning towards positive and YouTube is leaning towards negative. But with all this said, there are two distinctions that I want to make, and that's an aspiring beginner versus a guru. Like, if I was a guru, I might not be consuming still. I might be looking at these platforms from a creator's perspective, which in that case, these rankings these classifications are going to be different. Same thing with being an aspiring artist versus an aspiring content creator. I think there's a hidden trap in this distinction because you kind of can't be both. Being an aspiring content creator is in direct conflict with being an aspiring photographer, especially an aspiring photographer who is also a beginner and trying to just get reps in and level up. Making that a viable revenue stream for your life is going to take away time from actually creating the content, which is going out and doing photography. But this is just what I think, so I want to leave you with 2 questions. The first one is, what is your goal? And something to consider for social media specifically is, are you a beginner or are you a guru? And are you an aspiring content creator or are you an aspiring artist? Not that they can't go hand in hand, but which one do you prioritize over the other? If you enjoyed this video, I definitely recommend checking out my artist breakdowns here. Otherwise, please definitely leave comments, speak your mind, and I don't have all the answers and I'd love to hear what you think.